Can you show us a few of the differences between, can we pick out some symbols?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to show you the biggest difference between the two lathe patterns, it's pretty obvious to see on this AA raw bell dry ride, the deep, wide, traditional tonal grooves.
Right.
And then on this Neil Paragon ride cymbal, you can see the pinpoint example of the lathe that we use. And
right, it's really, even when you touch it, it's really fine.
Yeah.
Compared to this, it's like you drastically feel the, you know, going down like you're running your fingers down a brick wall or something.
And that all subtly affects the way the cymbal's going to sound. Now there are many other things we can do to change the sound of the cymbal. Let me walk over here and I'll show you a couple of examples. There's a few secret little tricks we can do to the bronze that make very unique properties happen in a cymbal, and one of them is just to make the metal even more flexible than it already is. And I can do things like this. You know, this is an 18-inch Evolution Crash, and I can just bend it. It's so pliable.
Yeah, I know when I buy cymbals, that thought of bending a cymbal like that never crosses my mind. I'd be too afraid to damage it.
Oh, no, and this is one of the most high-quality crashes we make, and you just touch it. It just immediately opens up. So we have those little secret tricks we do. You know, one obvious one is this bell is unfinished. And you'll notice on a lot of our cymbals, the bells are unfinished. We leave them unlathed.
Right.
On the cymbals that sustain, all the 1, 2, and 3K mid-range, that real piercing kind of sound you hear, like when you hit a Chinese cymbal, for example, that really hurts your ears almost when you hit it. You can dial that down a little bit, just like an EQ on a stereo, by leaving the bell unfinished, because in a cymbal that sustains, that's where those tones come from, is out of the crown of the cymbal. And plus, you can actually use the bell in your crash cymbals, which is something that nobody's really ever done because the cymbals are so thin in crashes in order to be able to open up and speak that you haven't really been able to do that before. So just something new that we created.
Different.
One other thing, sometimes we find things by accident. You know, we were experimenting making tambourine jingles out of the B20 Bell Bronze with some scrap cymbals. And Dave Weckel, a great jazz fusion artist, was up at the factory developing his Evolution series with us, and heard a couple of these cymbals with the holes punched out of it on a tree, and he's like, "Man, that's like that broken Tony Williams sound from the '60s, man. I gotta have that." And you know, we just kind of rolled our eyes a little bit and say, "Oh boy, how are we gonna make a cymbal with holes in it?" And that's one way we came up with making the metal more flexible in order to be able to do this and have it not break at all. So this is one of our most popular cymbals, believe it or not. Sometimes, you know, you just take a shot, throw something funky out there, and you end up with a big success, which is the Ozones have certainly been for us.
So, as far as the cymbals, these three cymbals in particular look just worlds different.
Right.
What is how is the finish done on them to make them so drastically different?
Well, this is the way the cymbal looks before it's ever got a lathe on it. Just leave it as is after it's hammered and the profile's into it. Then we take it to the lathe, and this is the way it looks right off of the lathe. They just shave off the dirty stuff right out of the cymbal. It just comes off in little shavings. They're spinning it really fast, and they just drag a carbon knife across the front, and it just comes right off. And then, so that's the natural finish, as we call it. Now, the brilliant finish is when we take the cymbal after it's already been lathed, and we take it to a buffer, and they put it up against a high-speed wheel with a buffing compound, and put this real mirror-like finish on it. Now, everybody always asks, well, what does it do to the sound of the cymbal? Well, with so many processes before it, and hand lathing, maybe hand hammering, no two hammer marks are ever in the same spot. You know, the weights of the cymbals are always just in, you know, slightly different tolerances. And there's so many things that affect the sound of the cymbal before that, it's really hard to say. But what it does do is it heats the metal back up to 400 degrees. And anytime you start messing with the cymbal and heat after it's already been tempered, you do change it slightly. And one thing it does is it makes the metal a little more flexible, it makes it respond a little bit faster. It may change the frequency slightly. You know, it's hard to tell.
Cool. Yeah. Well, why don't you play a couple of the cymbals for us and let us hear some of the differences.
Right on. Cool. I'll do. All right. Well, let me show you our entry-level cymbal model is the B8. Very high quality sheet B8 bronze. Cymbals can be very, very expensive, and I think I've explained a little bit maybe why, the reason why they're so expensive with all the hand craftsmanship and whatnot. This is one of those great cymbals that you can get into and not have to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on to get kids to have a great cymbal to be able to play on.
So that's the perfect cymbal for someone just starting out,
Absolutely.
just getting acquainted with drumming.
Yeah,
Great.
you got it.
All right, and then from there, where does it go?
Well, we've got B8 Pro, which is very similar to the B8 cymbals, except it comes in a brilliant finish. It's hammered a little bit differently, a little bit different profiles, different thickness. The thicker the cymbal is, the higher the pitch. So B8 Pro is a little bit thicker usually than B8, so you get a little bit more high pitch out of it, a little more cut. I've even got pros using B8 Pro,
wow.
Chinese cymbals and ride cymbals because they like that real high-end cut. Out of these particular cymbals. And from there it goes to our XS20, which is the best entry-level cymbal on the market. It is cast from the same castings I showed you earlier as the most expensive cymbals we make. And then from there we step into the AA series of cymbals. These have that little tic-tac hammer mark I was telling you about. The AA is cast B20 bell bronze. There's many different variations of cymbals in this series. The AA Metal X, for example, is a great, all the heavy players, even they like great sounding cymbals, and it's usually perceived that the better sounding cymbals are a little bit thinner. If you go too thick on the cymbal, that's when it kind of starts to sound a little platey and bongy and belly and kind of like a trash can almost. You get so much pitch when you hit it. Microphones do not like pitch in crash cymbals. You don't want to hit it and go bong. You want it to hit and go shh. So the AA series is our first professional cast series. This is an El Sabor model that we make for percussionists, timbali players, congueros. It's got an unfinished bell. Well, this has got a unique hammer that we use for the El Sabor, and it's also got a little turned up lip on the edge. It's not completely rounded profile. It's actually got a profile that goes a little bit like this on the end. And then the AAX series is one of our most popular series. This was a big innovation in cymbal making. This was really the first modern cymbal. Okay, the AA cymbals and the HH cymbals were made the same way cymbals were made around the turn of the century. Robert Zildjian's father introduced the tic-tac AA hammer mark. That's still used today. I think some of those machines are about that old too. If you see them, it's amazing they even work. And then the hand hammered, of course, goes back centuries. Well, music's changed a lot since then. In the 50s and 60s, you start, the introduction of the guitar player and the stacks of amps. Well, light, dark cymbals aren't going to cut through that wall of amps. So we had to, tweak and change. First, we made cymbals a little bit thicker, so they're a little bit higher pitched and brighter. They can poke through the amplified music. Okay, and then the mid 80s, you had people start to use late 80s. In-ear monitors were invented. So now you've got drummers with just high quality studio sound right in their ears. So you don't need that super big, bright cymbal that's going to cut through everything because it's right there, the same way it is in a recording studio. So AAX was a big innovation. It's a really responsive cymbal. It's got that, we invented with the pinpoint lathe. That's the first cymbal with the pinpoint lathe ever used. It's got a dime size hammer mark that changes the way the cymbals sound. These are some of the first cymbals we used with an unfinished bell like that.
It's hard to see, but it's in there.
Yeah, and you just
got to get it at the right light, and I really see what you're talking about.
I have more artists, rock artists especially, using this cymbal now with in-ear monitors than any other cast cymbal that we have.
Wow.
Just because it's so smooth and so versatile. It's really an even spread across the frequency range, so it's a great cymbal. It's very durable too because it's a little more flexible. That's a big misconception, a heavy cymbal, stiff cymbal is not the most durable cymbal. Those break the fastest because they do not give when you hit them. A lot of that has to do with the way they're played too, You can't just go straight into a cymbal, like you're pounding the nail with a hammer.
Right, they're done hammering it.
Yeah, we're done hammering it. So what you need to do is just come at it with more of a glancing blow, a little bit of an angle off the side. You just play through, but off to the side of the cymbal rather than playing right into it. And you never want to mount them too flat either. This is a very bad angle to hit a cymbal with. That's going to break fairly quickly. But if you play it a little more this angle and just come at it like that, you're going to get more response and the pure tone out of the cymbal, and it'll last a whole lot longer for you too.
Cool.
So let's take a look at some of these other series here. This is the Vault Crash. This has the AA tic-tac hammer combined with the innovative pinpoint lathe pattern.
Right.
So you get the great combination of a quick response and a real bright